Alright, so here's everything you need to know about early Japan. Here's Japan right here. You see that Japan is not just one island, it's a bunch of islands. You should have learned that in geography, but if you didn't, let me tell you, Japan is a bunch of islands, as you can see here. There are four main ones. We're not going to get too involved in that right now, but a lot of little ones. Know that it's a place that's that's characterized by a lot of small islands. There are lots of mountains on these islands. Not a lot of the land is farmable. Not a lot of the land is good for growing crops. There's a lot of mountains. There's a lot of earthquakes that occur here. Consequently, you won't be surprised to learn that they eat quite a bit of fish, right? This is where we get sushi from. The implications of this on ancient politics were that the land was so divided, as you can see, by water, so divided by all of these mountains that are around here, that it becomes very difficult to unite Japan. And in fact, that is what you see. Japan is characterized by a lot of division. Much like ancient Greece, you end up with many little clans that control just a little piece of the island. And those clans, those powerful families, were called daimyos. That's that word right there, daimyo. That is the powerful family that controls some sort of part of Japan. Now, the place does become politically united, and the families sort of fight against each other, and then one of them comes into control. There's a whole long and very sort of interesting history that we're not going to get into just for the sake of time, but just know that Japan it's very divided. There's a lot of powerful families. These are the daimyos, and they're fighting one another for control. And every once in a while, one wins and creates a little dynasty, but not for very long. In the time period that we're talking about, there's not a lot of unification. And that time period, by the way, runs right up until around 1500, slightly before that. But that is the time period we're talking about, sort of pre-1500. Now, these families, they needed enforcers, right? These families needed a military force to defend the family's lands, to, sometimes try and attack other families, to go after what they wanted. And those people were called the samurai. You may have heard of these guys. And here's a nice little picture of one right over here, right? The samurai were the warriors who served powerful families in Japan. We're going to learn a bit more about them in class. I gather that you've heard at least a little bit about them before. One thing that I would like you to know, other than that they look like that right there, is that they had a code of conduct that they called Bushido. Right here. So samurai literally means, like one who serves, and Bushido means the way of the warrior. It's sort of their honor code, and it's something that we'll discuss a little more in class. Japan remains independent throughout this period, but that's not through a lack of trying on China's part. You can see right here that the Mongols, this is after they'd taken over China. So this is Kublai Khan. So this is really just China, but it's China controlled by the Mongol dynasty or the Yuan dynasty. They launch a huge invasion of Japan and maybe would have conquered it, but don't. Right, the invasion fails, and Japan remains independent, and they don't really suffer another major invasion until World War II. And with that, we'll call it a day. So samurai are the warriors who serve the daimyos in Japan. Bushido is their code of conduct. I didn't talk about the shogun much, but I'll just let you know that I told you Japan went through all these wars, and they fought. The daimyos would fight one another. Well, there was a period of time where Japan did become unified and was ruled by a shogun. Japan had an emperor, but at that period of time, the shogun, which is basically just this big military leader, they were really the ones in charge. But we can get into more detail on that in the class. This is pretty much all you need to know for today.